court.
The Commission of Inquiry into allegations of state capture recommended that Brian Molefe, Siyabonga Kama and Anuj Singh be investigated for allegedly diverting state funds to the controversial Gupta family. It's understood that a contract to supply more than 1,000 locomotives to Transnet was originally awarded to another company, but this was later cancelled and given to Trillion Capital, which is linked to the Guptas. An irregular invoice for 93 million rand was then reportedly issued to the company. Molefe's lawyer, Benedict Matlape, reads out her client's affidavit in court.
I intend tendering a plea of not guilty on all the charges preferred against me at the commencement of my trial and submit that the evidence against me is with respect extremely weak.
The court is hearing the group's bail application. Alpha Ramshwana, Eyewitness News in Palm Ridge.
Research associate at Wits University, Lisa Vetten, has testified that High Court Secretary Andiswa Mengo used different strategies to communicate her reluctance and unwillingness to entertain the advances made by Eastern Cape Judge President Selby Mbenenge. Vetten is testifying before the Judicial Conduct Tribunal in Sandton, which is investigating the sexual harassment complaint Mengo laid against Mbenenge in 2023. Vetten has told the tribunal that there were 47 conversations between the pair, with the judge president sending the junior staffer 526 messages on social media platform WhatsApp, while Mengo only sent the top judge 311 texts. The gender expert is shedding light on gender and power dynamics in the workplace in the context of sexual harassment. In January this year, Mengo, in her evidence chief, testified that she was scared of saying no to the top judge's sexual advances, given his seniority and influence. Vetten looked at the pair's WhatsApp messages and zoomed into how Mengo responded to Mbenenge's requests.
She used what I have characterized as deflection. She tried to turn the subject away into something else and start talking about something else. She used evasion, so she wouldn't necessarily give a direct answer. She also used silence, just did not respond. She also used what I described as accommodation, where she would try to accommodate or engage with a request. And she also used active resistance. No.
Some Metrobus commuters are protesting against a new ticket payment system in the city. Metrobus says the system is based on distance travelled by a commuter. Previously, passengers used to pay without measuring the kilometres they had travelled. But it seems things from tomorrow might change. Thanoluhle Ngobo has more.
Commuters are not pleased with the new system, which will require them to measure the distance travelled by tapping in when they get into the bus and tapping out when they get off. Passengers have expressed frustration, saying they will now have to pay twice for their daily commute, adding that the bus service is already unreliable. Metrobus Services says they have noted the minimal number of commuters who have raised concerns about the new system, since it cuts off a lot of what it says is free travel. It has added, however, that most of its commuters are registering for the new system. Thanoluhle Ngobo, Eyewitness News.
And UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has urged the world to rev up the engine of development at a time when US-led cuts are jeopardizing the fight against poverty and climate change. Dozens of world leaders are gathering in Spain for the June 30th to July 3rd conference to seek fresh impetus for the crisis-hit aid sector. But the United States is snubbing the biggest such talks in a decade, underlying the erosion of international cooperation on combating hunger, disease and climate change. Guterres told delegates that 2/3 of United Nations Sustainable Development Goals set for 2030 were lagging and more than $4 trillion of annual investment would be needed to achieve them. In your financials, gold is $3,286.23 an ounce. The rand is 17.77 to the dollar, 24.33 to the pound, and 20.83 to the euro. Brent crude oils at $67.87 a barrel.
In Centurion, heading towards Midrand, there's an accident seen on the N14 southbound after Jean Avenue, causing about a 20-minute delay. While in Selby, traveling towards Riverlea, traffic sluggish on the M2 westbound. Between the Crown Interchange and Main Reef Road. Brakpan is slow-moving traffic heading into Benoni. That's on Rangeview Road approaching, that's between Dube and Tom Jones.
A fine day is in store for Gauteng, temperatures peaking at highs of between 15 and 18 degrees. The top story in EWN this hour, former Transnet executives Brian Molefe and Siyabonga Kama say they intend to plead not guilty to fraud, corruption and money laundering charges against them.
EWN, in touch, in tune, and independent. For the latest, visit ewn.co.za or download the EWN app.
Entries to the 702 Walk the Talk are open. Go to primemediaplus.com to get your tickets today.
You're with Relebogile Mabotja
Live, streaming countrywide
on the Prime Media Plus app.
DSTV channel 856,
92.7
and 106 FM.
Six minutes after 1 o'clock. Welcome 702 Afternoons with me, Relebogile Mabotja. Happy Monday to all of you. I hope you had a fantastic weekend and that somewhere in between the cold and the darkness of this winter, you were able to find some warmth and light. Coming up on the show today, we are going to be chatting on this last day of Youth Month about, and it's a simple thing that I want to ask all of you. What have you learned from young people? What would you like to learn from young people? What would you like to ask young people? I mean, our listenership is predominantly older youth, if I'm to refer to it as that, or post-youth. And I want to hear from you, and I'll share one of the things I've learned from young people that I completely admire, because I know we have many conversations where there are complaints about young people, but there's so many positive things to look at. And then we are going to talk movies and what to stream with Phil Mpela. Please go ahead and send through your movie recommendations, series, documentaries, any genre for that matter. And it can be old or new as well, and tell us why you're recommending it. Our travel feature, we're talking a set jetting, traveling to film and series locations, which to me sounds like so much fun. Iga Motilska will join us for that. That is the founder and editor of eagerjourneys.com. And then in the second hour of the show, Parenting and Parents, we're talking about teenagers and privacy. Should you as a parent spy on your child? What are the boundaries and limitations? And let me know what you do in your homes. Zianda Kumalo will join us for that, South African College of Applied Psychology spokesperson. And then we wrap up, as we do on a Monday, with Dr. Chris Smith, the Naked Scientist. And you can get your science-related questions in early. 011 883 0702. SMS us 31702. Tweet at Relebogile M at Radio 702 using the hashtag 702 Afternoons and the WhatsApp line 072 702 1702.
702 Afternoons
with Relebogile Mabotja
on 702.
Let's walk the talk.
What is it that you have learned from young people? What would you like to still learn from them? If you tuned into our Upside of Failure conversation on Friday, excuse me, you will learn or know that we had a mini panel discussion just where I got to ask my guest co-hosts that were with me, Khanya and Gerard, as well as our Upside of Failure guest, Zuleika Patel, about what are the issues facing young people. We touched on where the, legal or political age of youth should be ending. We touched on the issues facing your young teenagers, as Khanya's 14 years old, and the issues facing your individuals in their early 20s. We also touched on a couple of other issues, but it really got me thinking that we want to close off as a team this month, Youth Month, on a positive note. There's so many things we can learn from young people for those of us that are post-youth and no longer in the 35 and under, or whatever you consider to be youth, 30 and under. Now, we know the big key issues, your unemployment. We know that there are issues around an education system that doesn't necessarily accommodate everybody. We know that there are challenges with just the economy being where it is, and the ripple effects on young people. One of the things Gerard mentioned was that he went to go and open his first account to start to build credit. And he's like, he can't believe that he didn't even know half of the things that he had to figure out And he wishes that school had taught him more of the things that he needs to know as an adult without him having to figure certain things out. Or, for example, when you do accounting in high school, it doesn't cover your personal, it covers business accounting, so a couple of issues that were raised there. But I want to kick off by sharing what I have not just learned from young people, but admire from young people, because there's so many things we really can learn from this generation. So, excuse me, something that young people do really well that I absolutely admire is that when they want to do something, they just go ahead and do it. Obviously, there are negatives and positives to this. Excuse me. So, the part that I admire about them being creative, I'll use music as an example. My generation, when it comes to music, you might sit for months and months trying to perfect one song, right? Trying to have the money to shoot this ideal music video, trying to, have a marketing plan for the single, all of these things. Whereas young people will record a song today. Before they go to bed, they would have posted it. Like, do you know how admirable it is to not be overly perfectionist about your things? Because, and I'm sure many of you can relate, how many of us are sitting on ideas and things we want to do that we're just not going ahead and doing it? I saw a group of young people who were desperate for a TV show. They went and pitched to the BBC. They're British Africans, if I can call it that way, that come from 3 different countries on the continent. And the BBC rejected their idea. So what did these kids do? They got on a plane, went and just started doing this thing on their cell phones. They literally did not wait for somebody to say, here's this budget, here's an audience. They went and they just started shooting on their cell phones and started delivering the message they wanted to, which was to show how cool Africa is for young people in particular as well. Now, that is something that I absolutely admire about young people. Yes, there are downsides to it, but today is about the positivity. How many young people do you know that are just going ahead and doing things without even spending time thinking or worrying about what other people thinking and worrying about what else is on the market? I mean, if you want to start a business, usually the first thing you want to do is just go ahead and start searching who else is in the market, what is the demand. You sort of follow the steps of the business plan, the SWOT analysis. Okay, I'm going to need X amount. Whereas this generation, they just start and they're okay to have 7 businesses that didn't all succeed and do brilliantly well. But this is one thing I absolutely admire about young people, because I have these conversations with my team as well, my management team, where sometimes we spend too much time overthinking and being perfectionist about many things. Let me hear from you on what you've learned from young people and also what you'd like to learn from them, what you admire from them, what you'd like to know. 011 883 0702, the WhatsApp line 072 702 1702.
Bongani Bingwa, 702 Breakfast.
Weekday mornings, 6 to 9.
Crime intelligence boss, Lieutenant General Dumisani Khumalo, was released on 10,000 rand bail along with his co-accused. They're charged with fraud and corruption relating to the appointment of an unqualified civilian in a senior post. News 24 was reporting the country's top cop, General Fani Masimula, might himself soon be in cuffs for procurement irregularities. The fish rots from the head. How putrid is the stink coming from the top of our law enforcement?
Bongani Bingwa, 6 to 9.
On 702.
The Market Theatre presents the South African premiere of Fraser Grace's award-winning play, Breakfast with Mugabe. Directed by the 2025 Standard Bank Young Artist for Theatre, Calvin Raitladi, this psychological thriller explores the troubled mind of the once revered leader as he battles inner demons and political paranoia. Don't miss this compelling production with its brilliant cast and searing dialogue. on from the 16th of July to the 10th of August. Tickets available on web tickets or via markettheatre.co.za.
Quiet, please. Quiet, please. Quiet, please.
With 50% off on limited Tennistown tickets, no wonder Amex card members are so thrilled. Enjoy a world-class tennis experience at Monte Casino between 11 and 13 July 2025. Buy your tickets for Amex Tennistown online today at howler.co.za for the Championships Wimbledon experience with the Mzansi advantage. Tennis is better with Amex.
Welcome to the Chamberlain Hotline. Press 1 for heaters, 2 for expert DIY advice, 3 for deals hotter than your geyser.
Or press 4 for all the above when you visit your nearest Chamberlain for our famous for warming your homes promotion. Get everything you need to make winter warmer from the 19th of June to the 6th of July, plus 10% off chamber value paint mixing and a free hot chocolate while you wait. Chamberlain, famous for hardware since 1903.
PG Glass Repair, PG Glass Replace.
Hi, I'm Komoto, PG Glass Technician and winner of Belron's 2024 Best Repair Technician. If clarity is clear to see, that's what we're all about, keeping your windscreen clear from chips and cracks. And if we must replace, we fit only the best windscreens. Shutterproof, that's PRUFE.
Get to PG Glass today for quality, reliability and peace of mind. Call 0860 030303 today.
The Money Show.
Weekday evenings at 6.
On your next Money Show, Zilda Lachranji, the former private secretary to Nelson Mandela, now an international speaker, joins us to tell you how she makes her money. On the Business Books feature, we catch up with Professor David Kinley, a leading global expert on human rights law and corporate accountability. His new book is called In a Rain of Dust, Death and Deceit, and the Lawyer Who Bust Big Asbestos. We'll also analyse all the top business news of the day.
The Money Show
on 702. Let's walk the talk.
The Money Show with Stephen Curtis is brought to you by Absa Corporate and Investment Bank, a leading Pan-African bank and proud sponsor of the African Blockchain Report 2024. Absa is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
702 Afternoons
with Relebogile Mabotja.
18 minutes after 1 o'clock, and we are talking on this last day of Youth Month around the things we've learned from young people, the things that we would love to learn from young people, and the things we'd like to know from young people. It's not like there was not a time when we were not young, right? We also know what it feels like, or what it felt like, being the ones that were considered rebellious and going against the grain. And I think there's so many positives, and that's where I'd like the direction of this conversation to go as we wrap up Youth Month. A massive, massive group of the population that is facing many, many problems. Many problems we didn't even get a chance to touch on. We have not even had a chance to touch on mental health. The conversation really, time went so fast on Friday. Mental health is a very, very big thing with young people, because even with the reduced stigma in society where people are more comfortable to speak up about mental health, it does not necessarily automatically translate to support and the healing journey beginning. It does not translate to that. So now we have a generation, which is another thing I admire about them, that has been able to name things that they have experienced, things that we have experienced, things that our parents and grandparents' generations have experienced, but did not have a language for it, were unable to articulate what it is all about. I love that young people are so in their mental health naming things era. The problem is the what next, what comes after that. 011-883-0702 in the WhatsApp line, 072-702-1702. Pogiso in Krugersdorp says, Auslebo, I hope you are well. Remember the trio that went to Cape Town in a BMX without a single cent, sleeping in garages and sides of the road for the first 6 days. Love you so much, he says. I do remember. And I miss those parts of myself, man. Like Obviously, I can't just get on a BMX and start riding when I have responsibilities and a child. But the spirit of what they did. Young people are doing things for a good cause. Have you guys seen the Poppy show? Poppy or Poppy, if you find her on social media, literally goes and spends a period of time doing a variety of things that are not comfortable situations. And it's gone beyond just doing it for content. That's what young people are doing out there. It's to expose and bring awareness for so many other things. She will go and stay in the hostels in KZN. That woman has put her life in danger to do what it is that she is doing. And those are some of the things that I absolutely admire about young people. Now, excuse me, in terms of us as the grown-ups in the room, where are you finding yourself starting to wither and, I don't want to say fail, but wither away? My son has figured out things on my phone I didn't know my phone could do. I was FaceTiming with my sister, and there goes my son, takes over the conversation, and he starts literally putting these filters on. I didn't even know my phone could do that. This person is only 4 years old. They are so bright. They are so extremely, extremely smart. They catch on quickly. And yes, there are parts of me that will also lament that, in the sense that we struggled in our generation using the yellow pages and the map book because all my life I had to fight. You know, that is the generation that I come from, which was not even an all my life I had to fight situation. That was our grandparents. But we look now at young people and we actually are like, these people are on to something. They are definitely on to something. So another thing I can tell you I admire about young people, and it's not all of them, the sharp ones, like the truly sharp ones, are not going to come and ask you how to do something because they know that there are tools available for them to do any and everything that they would like to. Yes, they're using ChatGPT, and I can tell when my team members are using ChatGPT and not writing things themselves. But they are using the tools available to them. They are definitely using the tools that are available to them. I just want to read some of the messages that have come through on our Facebook in terms of what are the things that we would like to learn from young people. One is just referring to all the tech. How do they keep up with all the tech? I don't know. I have no idea how they keep up with all the tech, but I would assume that they're able to keep up with all the tech because they live on their phones. They live on their phones. I also happen to be a person who is living on her phone because some of my work happens on my phone, but I would assume that that is part of the way that they're able to keep up with all the technology that they do. The one about the energy and the knees, where is the energy coming from? Because these knees that I have cannot be the same knees that I had 20 years ago. Yes, very tongue-in-cheek, but something to think about as well. And there's so many other things I think that when we think about young people, we can definitely learn from them in terms of doing things in a simpler fashion than what we're used to doing. They are very good at short cutting. They are very, very good at finding the shortest distance between A and B. And there are positives to that. Yes, there aren't always going to be positives to it because sometimes understanding how things work from the beginning make it easier for you than when you are doing the shortcut to crisis manage or troubleshoot if something goes wrong. 011-883-0702, the WhatsApp line 072-702-1702.
Your voice.
Your life.
Your afternoon radio.
On 702 Afternoons.
With Relebogile Mabotja.
011-883-0702, the WhatsApp line 072-702-1702. Let me also remind all of you, 702 afternoons at 702.co.za. That is our email address. And the reason I'm reminding you is that our Belief Matters feature, we really want it to be something that you all can contribute to and participate in. We don't just focus on African spirituality or Christianity or Buddhism or Islam or Judaism. We cover absolutely everything. And because we don't know everything, we want to hear from all of you on the things that you are curious about and would want to know more about. But also, we will be announcing our book club today. Our book club read, we'll be announcing it today, and we will be having the discussion next week, which is the first Monday of July. And if you want to read along with us, we will post on the socials, but also announce before we close off the show so that you can participate. We've got a voice note on 072-702-1702 as we continue to ask of all of you what it is you want to learn from young people, or what could we be learning? What do you admire from young people?
Happy Monday. Yo, bana ba ka ba banyane bana ba tla go etsa ntshongolo never ever understand. Ke na le phone ya gore somewhere go thula go fitla. Give them. I'm telling you, will be surprised. Someone at like game you never ever you see on your phone. Bana ba is but too much excited, too much educated. Yo, neri nel kwa high fella straight phone ya fall him down, hey blah blah blah. They will do for you within a second. Take it. These kids, they're so clever.
They are so smart, but not only are they extremely smart, they really think they can do anything, whereas we are living from a place of being burned by life. On the WhatsApp line, Lindiwe from Wadeville says, Relebogile, they operate from no fear. Hence, disappointment is their stepping stone. That is such a beautiful way of articulating that. Max from Centurion says, Relebogile, just landed on my mind as I'm listening. I always feel so jealous when you speak about your son and what he can do and not do. I feel jealous in a good way because my son is the same age, but with autism. Would be interesting to hear how other parents navigate around the normal stuff. That's Max from Centurion. Max, I'm going to encourage you because I truly believe that children on the spectrum are gifted. And if they put in the right environments, you can get the most out of them. I will share the website. I just need to look for it, of an amazing woman. We may have even had her here on 702 on my show before, who has a set of twins who have autism. And it is her mission to really create a community for South Africans to have access not only to all the tools and resources, but also to opportunities for her children. It is very difficult when you don't have a lot of money, but also our system is not yet in a way where there are enough opportunities and spaces for children on the spectrum. So please, I can understand why you will say you feel jealous about my son, but I can assure you, your son having autism without me even knowing if they're nonverbal or struggle to communicate, they are brilliant individuals who are living with autism. They just need the right environment. I will definitely pull up that website for you to connect with Khomotso, who's the person that is really pushing hard on this agenda. One says, Relebogile, on Saturday, I was sitting at home thinking about TV photo shooters who stops me in the morning on my way to work. They wanted to do something in Steers and I refused because my husband had just passed on and I was wearing the attire for showing that I'm grieving. I was afraid, thinking that what are people going to say when they see me in the front screen? Even today, I regret why I missed the opportunity that they wanted to give me. Listen, I get where you're coming from, but that's one thing. Young people don't care. They don't have Bazotini syndrome. We stop ourselves from doing a lot of things out of fear of what are people going to say. They don't care. They really don't care. They just go ahead and do what they do. It's 1:30. Time for your latest Eyewitness News headlines. Good afternoon.
Thanks, Relebogile. Good afternoon. I'm Zingisa Chirwa. The death toll in the floods that hit the Eastern Cape earlier this month has risen to 102. The OR Tambo district remains the hardest hit with 78 fatalities. Among the lives lost are 32 pupils with a demographic breakdown of 49 men and 53 women. Residents from Marathon Informal Settlement in the city of Ekurhuleni are calling for action following a brutal dog attack which claimed a toddler's life. Reports say on Friday the 3-year-old girl was walking alone through a narrow passage in the settlement on her way to visit her grandfather when a number of dogs attacked her. And research associate at Wits University Lisa Vetten has testified that High Court Secretary Andiswa Mengo used different strategies to communicate her reluctance and unwillingness to entertain the advances made by Eastern Cape Judge President Selby Mbenenge. Vetten is testifying before the Judicial Conduct Tribunal in Sandton, which is investigating the sexual harassment complaint Mengo laid against Mbenenge in 2023. Those are the headlines this EWN and more at 2 or as it happens.
EWN Traffic.
In Centurion heading towards Midrand, we still have that accident seen on the N14 southbound after Jean Avenue causing more than a 20-minute delay. Selby heading towards the south, Soweto, there's also slow-moving traffic. That's on the M2 westbound between the Crown Interchange and Main Reef Road, while in Brakpan, traffic is a bit sluggish on Rangeview Road between Dube and Tom Jones. Look out for those faulty traffic lights in Rand Park Ridge at Bearsnodé and the N1, as well as in Edenville at Motorfontein Road and the N3. If you come across any other traffic issues, please SMS us on 31702. We are also on X at EWN Traffic.
There's more EWN on air, online, and on the EWN app.
Last year,
you laughed, you screamed,
you danced, then you wanted more.
So we listened.
Anele and the Club Live
is back.
And this time,
we're going even bigger.
After selling out in just one day,
we're tripling the capacity
and moving to the Sunbet Arena, Pretoria.
So if you thought 2024 was epic, round 2
will be louder and even more unfiltered.
Saturday, 19th of July, 5 p.m. to 8 p.m.
Live performances,
surprise guests,
chances to win big,
and all the club chaos you love for one night only.
Anele and the Club Live.
They run your mornings. Now watch them rule the night.
Get your tickets now at ticketmaster.co.za
before they sell out again.
No under threes.
More at primediaplus.com.
Beauty lovers, listen up. It's time to treat yourself because Takealot's month-end beauty sale is now on with savings of up to 50% off. That's right. Fabulous beauty deals just for you. Revamp your look with their top winter skincare products. Add that perfect mascara to make your eyes pop. Or find your signature scent with luxury perfumes. Want that beauty spoil now? Get unlimited same-day delivery with Takealot More. Download the Takealot app and indulge in the month-end beauty sale.
Get ready, South Africa. The 129th Hollywood Bets Durban July gallops into Hollywood Bets Greyville Racecourse on Saturday, 5th July. It's more than a race. It's the heartbeat of Mzansi. This year's theme, Marvels of Mzansi, celebrates our rich culture, vibrant heritage, and breathtaking beauty. From thrilling horse racing to show-stopping fashion and powerful performances by Zolani Mahola, Lira, Mafigi Zolo, and more. Feel the pulse of a nation in celebration. Tickets are flying fast. Secure yours now at Ticket Pro. The Hollywood Bets Durban July, Africa's greatest horse racing and social event.
It all starts with FNB Private. With secure, easy payments for a hassle-free overseas holiday. Tap, swipe, or go digital with your FNB Visa cards. Earn rewards when using your FNB credit card or global account debit and virtual card. You can even fund your global account on the FNB app while traveling. Make the most of every moment. Unlock invaluable with FNB Private. Help changes everything. FNB, a division of First Rand Bank Limited, an authorized FSP and credit provider. TCs, earn rules and limits apply.
As the official retail partner of the Springboks, Pick n Pay is proud to back the box and give you the chance to be the ultimate smart supporter with Pick n Pay ASAP. Money or the box on 702. WhatsApp your name, ID number, and the word ASAP to 072 702 1702. You could face the ultimate choice, a mystery Springbok supporter prize, or Pick and Pay ASAP vouchers worth up to 2,000 Rand. It's time to show your box spirit. Money or the box with Pick and Pay ASAP. Friday on 702 Drive with John Perlman. T's and C's on primemediaplus.com.
702 Movies.
24 minutes to 2 o'clock. Movies and what to stream. 011 8830702 and the WhatsApp line 072 702 and 702. We're joined by Phil Impela, entertainment commentator. Happy Monday. How are you doing, Phil?
I'm great, my queen. How are you?
I'm doing well. All right, let's get into it.
Yeah, look, you know how a lot of people complain about a channel called Moja Love, which is channel 157. I'm sure
yes.
I must have heard of it. Yeah. So sometimes I go in there and I find these shows. I'm like, oh my God, why are they not promoting these shows a lot? Because they are actually shows that I feel like are beneficial in terms of, you know, these reality shows and all of that, right? So one show that I want to highlight for today is a show that I stumbled upon called If I Like It. It's an interesting show, an amazing show. So the premise of the show is simple. It's family members, be it children or spouses, who after the death of their loved ones now are fighting with relatives over the inheritance of that past person. So it's a very interesting because it's not just the crew showing up with cameras and just sensationalizing the whole thing. There's actually a legal element to it because there's a lawyer that's involved in the show that actually helps the family to kind of like find a resolution to this. And I feel that while we're having this discourse all the time about how we portray our communities and our society with these reality shows, I think it is prudent that when there are shows that are actually doing something positive in that space, we should be highlighting it. So the show is called If I Like It. It's on Moja Love. Go watch it. It's very interesting stories. Some of these stories, I mean, we know them, our relatives or our communities, you know, they happen. So yeah, the show is called If I Like It and it's available on Moja Love. It's a DSTV 157.
I'm so glad you are showing the positives because they will not be the ones that trend. So it's good that you're alerting us to those positive ones. All right, what else do we have?
Not a new show per se, because you know it is second season and they are on their third episode in, but we haven't talked about it on the show, so I felt like I needed to come on here and give a shout out to Shaka Ilembe. I am so impressed by the show. Visually, it looks amazing, but for me, the standout for season 2 is the performances of the new actors, even the old actors, but I just want to, you know, give a shout out to the new characters that are on the show and the new actors that are playing on the show. These people have come in and they're not there to play. You can see that everybody is putting in their 110, if not 200% best for the show. The show looks amazing. The story is key this season, which is another thing that I love. I love that they have the resources clearly to put on this epic and visually stunning show, right? And there could be a tendency to want to lean too much on that on the visual aspect, but I love that Bomb Production this time decided to the story will be king. And when you watch the show, you sometimes forget about the spectacle and actually are immersed in the story and you discover new things about our history as South Africans. I am so impressed. I love the show. Every Sunday, I can't wait to see a new episode. If you haven't watched it, they're uploading the episodes the day after they've aired on Zanzi Magic. So the episode that aired last night is actually available right now. You can go see it. If you haven't seen the season 2 at all, the first 3 episodes are already available right now. Go see it and you will understand why I am so excited as somebody who loves performance art, somebody who loves great storytelling, why I am giddy about this show.
Oh my goodness. And I have to say, Phil, if you didn't get to hear it, we had a masterclass with the team last week. So we had Desiree Nomzamo and Jacob, one of the researcher writers, on what it takes to produce a TV series that is based on historical events. primemediaplus.com for you, Phil, and anyone else who wants to catch up on, you know, the sheer amount of work that went into putting together this labor of love.
Mm-hmm. Now we move on to something a little bit more sad. It's a documentary that I watched the other day, and it's called Grenfell Uncovered. So this documentary is based on the story of what happened 8 years ago in London, where the documentary takes us back to the tragic that happened in 2017 of the Grenfell Towers fire that took the lives of 72 people. Now, what makes this documentary for me interesting, and I think maybe that's going to be the hook for a lot of people who are going to be watching this, because this is a story that, a lot of people who follow international news or news in general will be aware of. But what I find interesting about this documentary is that in this documentary, they've got the former Prime Minister, Theresa May, actually as part of the people that they interview, and she gives her own take of what happened and, what she thinks of the decision that she made at the time and what her regrets are. It's a very, very, very fascinating watch. It's very fascinating to see somebody, do an introspection and retrospection, after something that has happened. And what I love about it is that Theresa May doesn't hold back. She's not giving political answers in any way. She is measured, of course,
yes.
but she's as honest as somebody in a position can be, and I feel like a lot of people will appreciate that. The documentary doesn't hold back. I mean, they call out, the authorities, they call out the political structures in Britain that failed the people of Grenfell. So it's a very interesting documentary. Go watch it. It's called Grenfell Uncovered, and it's available on Netflix to stream right now.
All right. While you're on documentary and Netflix, I have a recommendation for you, Phil. So first, my business partner told me about it, and then I started seeing so many people talking about it online. It's on Netflix, and it's called Poop Cruise. Now, the reason it's called Poop Cruise, oh my God.
Yes.
So in essence, a cruise ship goes out with about 4,000 people on board. Within a few days, the cruise shuts down. Now, you might think to yourself, that's not a big deal. But there are so many things that require power to run, including their plumbing system, including their food. So that documentary follows what happened in that time, and hence the name Poop Cruise. Now, I was supposed to watch it this weekend. I was forced into watching Coco and Moana for the 7 millionth time. But I'm giving it a recommendation to you because I will really want to know what you think.
Yeah, I don't know. I've actually seen it, but I actually seen the YouTube version of, these days you've got individual content creators creating their own sort of like documentaries, right?
Yes.
So I've already seen the YouTube one and I saw this one. Yeah, it's very interesting. I totally concur, 100% agree. Everyone should go see that.
Okay, a must watch. Now we move on to Miller's Girl.
Yeah, we move on to Miller's Girl. Now, the reason why I wasn't going to really want to talk about movies per se, but I feel like I needed to recommend this film because I'm conflicted, because this is one of those films that have people divided. It depends on which side of entertainment you sit on in terms of films and in terms of what you want to see in a film. So, Miller's Girl is a film that stars Jane Ortega, who is the young starlet right now in Hollywood, who's getting a bit of attention. But for me, the reason why I wanted to see this film was simply because of the name Martin Freeman. So Martin Freeman, for our listeners, is the guy who is on Sherlock, the one with Benedict Cumberbatch, but they will know him more from The Hobbit. He's the guy who plays the lead in The Hobbit, right? I love him, I enjoy his work. So I saw his name, I was like, I haven't seen this movie, let me watch it. And watching it, at first while I was watching it, I was like, this is such an intriguing film because it's one of those films that challenges our own moral judgment. So let me give you the premise, right? So the story is a teacher and a student slowly getting infatuated with each other and getting into this, taboo kind of relationship that has predictable consequences. But the way that it's done, it's fascinating for me, because I always want to remove my own personal biases from the story. I need the story to lead me to where it needs to lead me. And if I have to question, I will question, right? And I feel like the film does that very well for me, but I saw that other people did not feel the same way. Other people don't like it. They feel like the film is spoon-feeding. So I would love to see if any of our listeners would watch that and have a different perspective on it. I think for me personally, it's a dilute of a melodrama, yes, but I think it's an okay film. It's a bit formulaic, but I think it's an okay film. And if you are interested, please go watch it and let us know what you think about it. The film is called Miller's Girl. It's available right now on Showmax. It's not a new film. It came out in 2024, but it's still, a good watch. So go see it, Showmax, Miller's Girl.
Okay, cool. Thank you for that one, Phil.
Yeah, but before I go, I promised yesterday that I will touch on this. But yeah, I think today is that day. Listen, congratulations. I watched Untied, and I want to say this, and I'm not buying your face, eh? No, honestly, you are one of the best broadcasters and interviewers that we have in this country. And I'm not just saying that because you're my friend. Because here's the thing. When I first, like most people, when I first saw the trailer for Untitled, I heard about Untitled, I was like, oh my God. Now another melodrama of people's personal relationships. Why do I need to know about Nonku's divorce? Like, why should I care? You know, kind of thing. But the way that you conduct these interviews is not sensationalized in any way. There's no salaciousness, and these women are telling their stories in a way that it's not a gotcha. You know what I mean? They're not trying to malign anybody, and you allow the space for the conversation to happen in a non-judgmental and non-accusatory way, but still allowing these people to tell their own stories their way. Kudos on that. Great job. It might not be for everybody, but I would recommend that people go watch it because you are the host.
we know that. Let me say, I know Horo Street, and I know that you would never buy face with me because your credibility is everything. But this is one of the projects that I think I've been the most nervous about, because I'm not just nervous for myself. I'm also nervous for the guests. It's not exactly like they put themselves in a shining light, you know, from the first episode with Nonku that you saw. She was real about some of the things she did herself in her past relationships, and I cannot wait. I mean, there's a court case that is pending to stop one of the episodes. I'm sure you're aware, Phil.
Yeah, I'm very much aware of that. But I think even without it, I think the show will still hold, you know, because I mean, these are interesting stories. But I understand. I understand if somebody feels, and that's another thing. Like, let me just say that very quickly, because sometimes people haven't seen something and they prejudge it without having seen it, you know, based on how social media and all these platforms these days are so, you know, negative and so vindictive, you know. So I do understand somebody saying, hey, I don't want that out there if they haven't seen it. But but we'll see how it goes.
Look, I'm crossing fingers. New episodes are when, Phil?
On Tuesdays, they drop on Showmax.
I had to ask from the team, what time are they up? They're like, no, 6 a.m. so that I can make sure I see it. But thank you so much for watching. And we've got Palesa Modisakwane's story tomorrow. And I can tell you something that I think many people won't be aware. Not every interview is the same, because sometimes you'll think, why would somebody want to hear the story again? We saw it play out in real time. There are other details and the other side that sort of start to come up. But thank you so much. Phil, where are we finding you on the socials?
I'm on X, former TikTok, former Twitter as @Fompela, and I'm also on TikTok, and that's Hopola_Mpela. Sometimes I'm on Instagram, but hey, don't blame me if you don't see me there.
And then Anonymous in Kempton Park says, guys, many shows on Moja Love are educational. Ekaya, Mamazala, Babgeld, they teach about the law. Bravo to the producers. Thank you so much for raising the positive, Phil.
This week on Polytricking with Sidi Madia.
I'm joined in studio by Relebogile Mabotja. What should the NC's response be, though, to a name like Helen Zille? You've got her being touted by the DA. You hear people saying Lindy, where Mazibuko must find a way to also contest, to Lee Joburg. Some people are saying the NC should look back at a Park Style.
I think that we don't need a messiah, because any approach that says there must be a messiah, whether that messiah comes through the ANC or comes through the DA, you are not going to solve the problem, because the problems in Johannesburg are systematic, they are structured, they are historical, because you can bring a messiah and that messiah is going to be dwarfed because the damage is so huge.
Listen to the full episode on primemediaplus.com. Polytricking with Sidi Madia on EWN. In touch, in tune, and independent.
The Market Theatre invites you to Breakfast with Mugabe, the South African premiere of the award-winning psychological play. Haunted by a vengeful spirit, Mugabe reluctantly seeks the help of a white psychiatrist, leading to a tense and dangerous power struggle. Expect sharp dialogue and riveting performances in this fictional take on the once revered leader. Don't miss Breakfast with Mugabe from the 16th of July to the 10th of August. Tickets available on web tickets or via markettheatre.co.za.
We are woven into the same soil that shapes South Africa. Its dreams, its energy, its promise. These guide us. Together, we've built progress hand in hand, from the mines to bustling main streets, from one generation to the next. With communities, government, and partners, every initiative from healthcare to education, youth empowerment to entrepreneurship lights the way forward. Because we don't just mine minerals, we mine possibility and progress with purpose. Together, we're shaping what's next, mining potential, building beyond. Anglo-American.
Kickstart your small business with a starter bundle from Nedbank. Enjoy free transactions for 6 months, including free cash deposits and withdrawals and a free debit card with easy digital access and a dedicated banker to guide you along every step of the way. Open a Nedbank starter bundle with SA's best bank for SMEs. Apply on the Money app today. Nedbank. See money differently. Nedbank is a licensed FSP and credit provider. T's and C's apply.
Looking for the real ways to live greener? Then don't miss Green Tip of the Week, your weekly dose of sustainable inspiration. From eco-entrepreneurs to climate champions, we sit down with the people making real change. Catch Green Tip of the Week every Tuesday on Afternoon Drive with John Perlman from 3 to 6 p.m. only on 702. Proudly brought to you by Volvo. It's safe to be brave with Volvo.
702.
Travel.
This travel feature is brought to you by Standard Bank Private. Live wealthier with Africa's best private bank, as voted at the 2025 Global Finance Awards. 8 minutes to 2 o'clock as we jump into our travel feature. Iga Motilska is chatting to us today just around jet setting, traveling to different film and series locations. Happy Monday, Iga.
Happy Monday. Yes, absolutely. And it's such a cute little pun on jet setting. It's called set jetting.
Yep.
And it's so much fun. I've done a little bit of it, but I'm hoping that I can discuss and share some of the places that I still want to go sometime in the future.
Please do.
So first of all, I just want to say, it's so popular because obviously fans want to feel closer to the stories and the characters they love. They want to stand where Daenerys stood in King's Landing. They want to sit and eat a croissant at that iconic cafe in Montmartre and reminisce all about Amelie. You know, they want to spot the facade of the Friends apartment in Greenwich Village, or perhaps maybe even stroll through Hobbiton in New Zealand. And so it's all about creating that emotional connection. And of course, we know that these days, TikTok and social media have fueled this kind of trend. And of course, streaming services are all about exposing us to these stunning locations that perhaps we never considered visiting otherwise. So yeah, very exciting in that sense.
And I think it's so nice that these productions actually share and they make a whole thing about it. Do you remember with the Barbie movie how there was a whole Airbnb, not so much going onto the set, but you could go into a Barbie house if you wanted to?
Absolutely, yes. There's even a Lego house, I think, somewhere in Iceland as well. So it's all about that. And I mean, sometimes some hotels also jump onto the trend by buying a whole bunch of paraphernalia and souvenirs and, painting their rooms in a certain way as well. So, I mean, even if you don't get a chance to travel to the actual location, there are so many film and series themed hotels around the world as well.
All right. So where else should we start, preparing our bucket lists to travel to?
Oh my gosh, anywhere and everywhere. So I think it really depends on what you're a big fan of. When I was in the UK, I went and visited a whole bunch of different destinations related to Harry Potter. That's from my generation. I'm giving my age away, almost 40. But there are so many fascinating ones that also give you some kind of insight into a destination's history. So maybe if I can just mention The Witcher, because that's obviously close to my heart. It's located in Poland, the actual set. It's called Ogroniec Castle. And of course, it sort of brings that fantasy world of Geralt of Rivia to life through all of those atmospheric landscapes and castles. It's a ruined medieval castle. It's actually located in southern Poland, so it's very close to the region where I was born. And it forms part of the scenic so-called Eagle's Nest Trail. And the castle was famously used in the Battle of Sodden that you can see in season 1. and you can just have a look at these dramatic crumbling walls, the towers, the vast courtyards, and it sort of gives you that instantly recognizable and like beautiful backdrop to the series. And of course, as I mentioned, the castle is found along Eagle's Nest Trail, and this is actually a chain of various 14th century fortifications that stretch for about 163 kilometers between Kraków and Częstochowa. And the region is characterized by these towering, very dramatic limestone cliffs and caves and forested valleys, hence obviously its name, Eagle's Nest. And there are about 25 other castles and fortifications and watchtowers that you can visit along the route as well. So I would say that's one of my favorite ones. And of course, the castle is accessible on a day's trip from Kraków. It's only about a 1.5 hour drive. So I do recommend perhaps, renting a car, because then obviously you can tailor your road trip according to your interest and choose how many of the different castles you'd like to visit as well.
Okay, and I mean, when choosing some of these places to go to, Iga, because I can imagine somebody being in South Korea and wanting to go and see where they shot Squid Game, or wanting to see where they shot Narcos before we go back to our list. But what are some of the considerations a person should have before embarking on these trips?
Yes, I think that's really important. I think the first thing is perhaps maybe like managing expectations of reality versus real life, if you'll excuse the pun. But many of these scenes have been enhanced by CGI and special effects. Perhaps they were also filmed on custom-built sets that no longer exist, or perhaps they were never really real places. And so sometimes what might appear in a movie or a series as like this vast, ancient, sprawling city might actually have just been like a small set piece in a studio, and it's been digitally altered. So I think that's something to keep in mind. And of course, to be considerate and to realize that some of these destinations might actually be on private property or in really remote areas that are difficult to access or require a special permit. So I think it's important to consider that not every visible spot is open to the public. And just also keeping in mind, for example, that a film might have been shot during a specific season when the weather was great and ideal. So I think it's also important when planning to keep that in mind, because your experience of it might be completely different, in summer versus in winter. And of course, I think just respecting locations and local communities. While it brings so many economic benefits to the region, I think it's also important to be mindful of where to draw the line and when it actually becomes over-tourism, because you might have the sudden influx of visitors that constrain the local infrastructure. It often results in price increases for residents. There might be some environmental damage that's associated with it. So I would say to support local businesses, to be aware of your footprint. And if you're doing a tour, is to do one that's ethical and employs guides who are perhaps survivors or family members or historians and people who can actually offer personal insights, because very often some of these scenes might be linked to dark tourism.
And by that meaning, actual real people having lost their lives and things like that, your sensitive historical events.
Definitely. And so, that's what we see in Narcos and Chernobyl, where they're linked exactly to real life tragedies. And other examples that we might have read about or seen on screen include, for example, the Anne Frank house in Amsterdam or the killing fields in Cambodia, which I feel very privileged to have been able to visit. In South Africa, we've got, for example, Robben Island as well. So I think it's important to visit these sites with the due respect that they deserve and the intention to learn from history, to honor the victims, to reflect on the events that happened there, rather than merely sort of treating it as a tourist attraction or a backdrop for casual photos.
And I think that's important. Yes, and I think that's the biggest thing, Iga. Head over to igajourneys.com to find out more, as Iga speaks about The Witcher and going to Poland, Colombia for Narcos, Squid Game, South Korea, Italy, Sicily for The White Lotus, and many, many more.
Living wealthier starts with expanding your income so you have more to invest. At Standard Bank Private, you can enjoy UCount rewards, the cheapest forex rates from Shift, and exclusive benefits and discounts on banking solutions and travel. So, come live wealthier with Africa's best private bank. Apply online at standardbank.co.za. Standard Bank is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
This is EWN.
Good afternoon, I'm Zingisa Chirwa. 4 former Transnet executives accused of fraud, corruption and money laundering have each been released on 50,000 rand bail. MK party members Brian Molefe and Siyabonga Gama, together with former Transnet CFO Anosh Singh and former engineer Thamsanqa Gama, appeared in the Palm Ridge Magistrate Court. They face allegations of diverting 93 million rand to a company connected to the Gupta family as part of a locomotive deal in 2015. The magistrate ruled that there is no reason to believe they'll violate their bail conditions. The death toll in the floods that hit the Eastern Cape earlier this month has risen to 102. The OR Tambo district remains the hardest hit with 78 fatalities. Among the lives lost are 32 pupils with demographic breakdowns of 49 men, 53 women and 63 adults and 39 children. The provincial government continues providing shelter and meals to displaced families in community care centres and accommodation establishments in and around Mthatha in OR Tambo district and Butterworth in Amatoe district. Provincial spokesperson Kusela Ranchi says 56 flood victims have been buried across the province to date.
The search and recovery teams are continuing with the search, working tirelessly to locate and recover any possible remaining bodies. The South African Police Services and Emergency Medical Services helicopters have been deployed this morning to support the ongoing search and recovery efforts, and this coordinated aerial support aims to intensify the search.
Residents from Marathon Informal Settlement in the city of Ekurhuleni are calling for action following a brutal dog attack which claimed a toddler's life. Reports say on Friday, the 3-year-old was walking alone through a narrow passage in the settlement on her way to visit her grandfather when a number of dogs attacked her. Thandoluhle Ngcobo reports.
It's understood that following the attack on Friday, members of the community took matters into their own hands, demolishing the shacks believed to belong to the owners of the dogs. Today, Ward Councillor Jeffrey Mthembu says he will visit the local SPCA to request urgent intervention on the handling and removal of the dogs. Mthembu says this is the third incident where the same dogs attacked children. He has also called on the relevant departments, including animal control, environmental health and community safety in the city to address the matter urgently. Thandoluhle Ngcobo, Eyewitness News.
Gender expert Lisa Vetten has told the Judicial Conduct Tribunal that Eastern Cape Judge President Selby Mbenenge blurred the lines in his professional relationship with High Court Secretary Andiswa Mengo. This after Mbenenge asked the junior staffer for her photos on the 8th of June 2021, the very same day he started communicating with Mengo on social media platform WhatsApp. Vetten is an expert witness providing insight on the asymmetrical power relations that exist between Mengo and the top judge. The judge's secretary accuses Mbenenge of sexual harassment after he allegedly made unwanted sexual advances towards her between 2021 and 2022. Vetten has testified before the tribunal that some of the requests made by Mbenenge signal an exercise of power.
So, I think one of the interesting points about that is to ask another person for pictures in a workplace. A personal picture of yourself is not a requirement in this job. She's a secretary. Asking for pictures without giving any explanation as to why you want those pictures. You can see that as an expression of power in the sense that people who can demand things of others without explanation, that's an expectation that I ask. You don't need to know why.
Gold is trading at $3,278.60 an ounce. The rand is 17.75 to the dollar, 24.34 to the pound, and 20.82 to the euro. Brent crude is at $67.64 a barrel.
In Midrand, heading towards Sandton, there's bumper-to-bumper traffic on the N1 southbound. That's between Samrand and New Road due to an earlier accident. Look out for those faulty traffic lights in Rand Park Ridge at Bears Nordier and the N1 North, as well as in Edenville at Modderfontein Road and the N3.
A fine day in store for Gauteng. Temperatures peaked at highs of between 15 and 18 degrees. The top story in EWN this hour: 4 former Transnet executives accused of fraud, corruption and money laundering have each been released on 50,000 rand bail.
EWN, in touch, in tune, and independent. For the latest, visit ewn.co.za or download the EWN app.
You're with Relebogile Mabotja
Live, streaming countrywide
on the Prime Media Plus app.
DSTV channel 856,
92.7
and 106 FM.
Minutes after 2 o'clock. It's the second and final hour of 7:02 afternoons with me, Relebogile Mabotja, and we are going to jump straight into our parenting and parents feature as we are talking about teenagers and their privacy. Should you as a parent be able to spy on your child, if that's what you'd like to call it? I want to hear from all of you on your experiences. We'll be joined by Zianda Kumalo, who is the spokesperson from the South African College of Applied Psychology. And we take your calls for that conversation with all your comments and questions. And then we'll have the Naked Scientist join us. Dr. Chris Smith will answer all of your science-related questions. So get in touch with us, 011-883-0702, SMS us 31702, tweet at Relebogile M, at Radio 702 using the hashtag 702 Afternoons, and the WhatsApp line 072 702 1702.
Parenting and Parents
on 702.
Parenting and Parents time, and teenagers. For all the parents who are raising teenagers, I want to hear all of your stories and your experiences. How do you juggle the concept of privacy? What are the boundaries that are in place for you and your children? Do they have their own rooms? Do you allow them to lock their doors? Do you snoop? Do you go through their phones? Do you confiscate their phones? How do you manage it? 011-883-0702, the WhatsApp line 072-702-1702. We're joined by Zianda Kumalo, who is the spokesperson for the South African College of Applied Psychology. Zianda, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Relebogile. Thank you so much for having me.
Zianda, this is such a sensitive conversation because we were all teenagers at a point in our lives. And no matter how strict or relaxed your parents were, there were certain things you just did not want them to know, even if they were not, in inverted commas, bad things.
Very, very true. I mean, all of us at some point were sort of bordering, do I say something? Do I let them check? Do I let them sort of spy on me? Am I communicating? Am I being open? So it is definitely a very delicate conversation, especially in this digital age.
So in your view, when it comes to, because, the intentions, I would imagine for many parents is to protect their children, but it may exceed that sort of protection and become a bit more, whereas at the same time, you're trying to build a relationship of trust with your child where they're able to eventually be independent and have discernment and be able to figure this life thing out on their own.
So there is definitely a lot of tension when we look at protecting a child and at the same time respecting their growing independence. It's definitely a challenge that parents definitely do face, especially in the digital age that we live in, especially because if you look at the one hand, parents are focused on protecting and safeguarding their children from a lot of what we see that happens online and from different peer interactions. Whilst on the other hand, teenagers are developing their identity, their autonomy, and a need for more privacy at this point. So trust does definitely become the bridge. And instead of reacting out of fear and out of I guess, what social media is building and what we see also, we definitely need to build a place of connection from the parents' side where we allow open communication to build a culture where a child is more likely to disclose struggles without feeling forced.
Okay, so if we look at how prevalent the monitoring is, we have parents who will check the website history. So they go and see what websites teenagers have been visiting. We look at them checking their social media profiles. We look at some of them actually friend or follow their teenagers on social media. We also look at some of the parents that go and check their teenagers' phone call records and text messages. Now, I'm in so two minds about certain things of this list, but I'd like to find out from your side. Are some of these monitoring ways of online activity by following or checking their phone records and messages, are these proven from what you can see to actually work, or do they just teach children to be better at hiding?
I must say it's sort of a very fine line in between, because there's a point where monitoring does shift into spying, especially when it's done in secret. So then we see where a child now starts hiding things because they're aware that their parent is looking at their social medias, is actually talking to their online friends, or a friend mentioned that, oh, your mom followed me the other day. And that's when now we see that they aren't necessarily clear boundaries, especially in the parent to child relationship, because at this point there is a lot of autonomy that a teenager does need. So checking browser history without a discussion between your child, or planting tracking apps, for example, or reading a child's messages, that does break that field of trust, because it tells your teenager that I don't believe you're capable of making good decisions. So a healthier approach does definitely involve creating guidelines together of, if monitoring is necessary, then it should be framed as more of a support tool than punishment. So your child should feel that I'm not necessarily being spied on, I'm being monitored. My parent does want me to remain safe and stay safe. So I'm open, and my parent does have access to everything. But as soon as it's done without their knowledge, it is definitely then falling into spying.
Okay. So for you, are you of the view then that if a parent does it behind the child's back, it is spying? But at the same time, which is, I guess, the question that many parents would ask is, but if I do tell my child, they're just going to learn how to delete things and hide them. I mean, you can literally go online on spy mode where it doesn't keep a browser history, unless you have like a very smart IT person that is able to bypass those things.
I'd definitely say it does border spying, especially because as much as a teenager possibly doesn't find out, the damage it causes when a teenager does find out, and I mean to the smallest of things, the most harmful of things, and a teenager starts picking up that actually, how does my parent know that information? How does my parent know that I'm interacting with this particular thing? And it becomes a big thing, because then when there is something that you're seeing that you're not too happy with, how do you put the discussion on the table? Because as soon as you do, then how do you explain how you know that information? So it's easier really if you do have the open communication of, I do want to ensure that you're safe at all times, and I trust that you will make the right decisions. I trust that your autonomy won't be misused or misguided, but I would like to know what you're up to or why you're doing what you're doing, rather than monitoring in such a way that they're unaware of what it is you're looking at. For example, if you look at the uses of the Google Family Link, and it doesn't allow us to go over normally 13, but it does allow some settings up until the age of 17. But if you look at something like the Google Family Link, it allows you to monitor in a safe way, because your child at that point knows what you're looking at. They know as soon as they go into the wrong website or a website that isn't for their age at that time, then you would know about it. So it's also sort of creating that space where your child feels open to share what they come across, to share how it is they're engaging online in general.
So here's a question before I go on to take on some of the questions coming through on the WhatsApp line, is what should consequences, and obviously it's different in every home, but what would you recommend, being a psychologist and a counselor, the consequences should be if certain rules have not been abided to? And this obviously also puts the responsibility on the parents to be very explicit with rules in the house about what not to do, for example, and things like that, as opposed to just losing their minds and assuming, well, this is a given with a teenager doing whatever it was that they were doing. I saw Dr. Shafari, who is into conscious parenting, and she posted something where she said she had a client who discovered that her daughter, who was 12 years old, was sending inappropriate photos to a boy. And she said, you know, the natural reaction that a parent would have is to want to totally freak out and lose their mind, as opposed to seeing it as an opportunity for a conversation. And after she advised her client, you know, be curious as opposed to just being angry. And when she sat with her, she discovered that the child actually just felt like, well, maybe I thought maybe he would like me if I sent these types of photos. And what that started to strengthen the relationship between mother and child. But that's not always going to happen that way. So I'm curious as to your thoughts as to what should happen. Because in the ideal world, you would sit down and have a healthy conversation with your child about whatever it is you find on the phone and ask questions and try to sort of see where they're coming from, as opposed to what a natural reaction would be, which is fuming and freaking out.
Yeah, so as valid as the fuming and freaking out is, it also causes a very similar reaction for your teenager as well. So they'll mimic how you are responding and reacting, and either they shut down or they go exactly as you are. They're also outraged and they feel like you've sort of double-crossed them and you've went against their privacy. So yes, definitely a big one is making sure that the consequences are on the table prior to anything, so that they also don't feel like, oh, now there's things happening, or you found something and now you're also putting things on the table that weren't there in the beginning. So make sure it's laid out. They should know what will happen in the case that they are caught in the wrong online space. Those consequences do need to take an approach where you are positively conditioning your teenager. If you go on the limb of, I need to respond from the anger, as much as, yes, they may be concerned, that creates then a narrative that even if I did say something, even if I did communicate, my parent at this point won't hear me, or maybe they won't believe me. So you need to make sure that the consequences are outlined and they make sense in terms of this particular consequence is like this because of. So for example, you find that your child is online and speaking to people they shouldn't be speaking to. Something like that doesn't mean just take your child's phone and say you're grounded, you're not supposed to use social media, because the one thing you need to understand is that a teenager being a teenager, they will rebel. So you need to be able to say, actually, instead of responding that way, which will also shock them as well and allow the space to do better. Instead of responding that way, rather say, okay, there's this, this, and this. Tell me about it. Let's unpack it a bit. Before even saying, you know the consequences. Because something like that, sometimes you don't need to go into you're grounded and I'm taking away your phone. It's understanding why did we get there? How did we end up there? Where is the lack? Where is the gap?
I've got you completely.
That understanding can come through, it changes things.
Somebody says, no matter how careful or strict you are, teenagers will always teenage. That's what they do. That's what they do. Some of your messages are coming through on the WhatsApp line, 072 702 1702. Let's start with your voice notes.
Hi, Relebogile Mabotja here. No privacy. when you're living under your parents' house. That is why certain people online can take advantage of young people because of this idea of privacy. Nothing is private. It's not your home. They should be able to get in whenever they need to check what you're up to. That's how we were raised, and thank God for that, because God knows what our little silly minds would have gotten up to. No privacy at all.
Oslebo, yeah, I hear your topic. It's very interesting. In my house, my rules. You don't have privacy. Your phone is my phone. It's not yours. It's mine. I've borrowed it to you. Your room is not yours. You are squatting. It's my house, my rules. You do as I say, not as I do. You will listen and you will do things the way you are supposed to do them. If you don't want to, the doors is always open.
All right, those are two of the listeners on the voice notes. I'm going to say it straight up. I completely 100% disagree with those two voice notes, but I'll park my views, because already, let's even forget about the part of phones. Like, you are two grown men. Does that mean that your daughters don't have like, I've got so many questions, but let me find out from you, Zianda, your thoughts on that.
Relebogile, I definitely agree with you there as well. My sentiments also match yours. I definitely do disagree. That causes, in most cases, and I won't say in all of them, but in most cases, it does cause a lot of rebellion. It does cause a lot of things being hidden, or especially in a household where there's two parents, one parent gets sort of filtered the information more than the other parent. It does create a very toxic relationship in the space of a parent to child relationship, and the autonomy that a child should be building in their teenage years, they don't get to create that. They don't get to see that I am trusted and I can then lean back if I need to. I can correct myself if I need to. I can learn from my mistakes, but more it's the fear of, I know there'll definitely be consequences. There'll definitely be punishment at home. The door's always open, so I know that I can't do anything. But when they do, the problem is most times they will then openly communicate that you were too strict, you were too stringent, you didn't give me space, you didn't give me any ounce of, I can see you're getting older, I trust that you'll do the right thing. So it does actually cause a bit more damage sometimes. I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't work, to each their own, but I definitely do disagree with the sentiments on my end as well.
I'm also gonna just add that there's certain things that allowing your children to have a certain level of autonomy over their lives is going to teach them. You know, my understanding is you need to raise children to learn how to take care of themselves and be on their own. How are they going to exercise that if they only get to do it when they leave the house? Because to me, I'm always fearful of the concept of parenting from a place of fear and from a place of control. So if the threat is, you know, you either listen or you get out, you're just going to teach a child how to be obedient. What is that going to mean when they get into the workplace? What is that going to mean when they're out in the wide world where they're not even able to practice having a conversation and sharing their perspectives? On top of that, what kind of relationship are you going to have with your children? Can you imagine you being 80-something years old and they say you're under my roof, no privacy? Because the way your children are going to treat you is going to be reflected, a reflection of how you raised them. So I don't know what tools, and I'm going to read some of the messages. One says children must listen to parents after 18 years, then they can do as they want. I disagree. There's no such thing, because there are parents who are sexually abusing their own children. Now, when you teach a child to be obedient to their parents and obedient to adults, guys, like, this is so scary. One says, Great topic. When I was 14, my aunt used the suitcase lock key to open my diary. She read it and shamed me about my secret thoughts and feelings documented in it. I was so confused and needed guidance as a teenager or an adolescent. I'm now in my 40s and I keep remembering how I felt every time I need to hold myself accountable with my teen boys. So I try to honor their privacy unless there's an incident that justifies an investigation using their chats. I mean, opening somebody's diary, that is just, yeah. Another one is saying, Bashi here, my question is, what if your parent takes your phone without explaining why? Does it teach a lesson or just causes more anger? Another one says, my second question, do parents have the right to take your phone away? And is this right punishment? I mean, I would say you have to ask yourself the question. If somebody took something away from you without explaining why, would you be angry? Because children are also human beings. And if you're saying, do parents have a right to take a phone away? I think under circumstances they do. Zianda, your thoughts on that?
Taking phones away under certain circumstances, yes, they definitely do, especially if the child is either of harm to themselves or harming others, perhaps. But yes, in that case, they do. However, that also at some point, especially if it wasn't necessary for the situation, it does cause a very large break in trust. It does cause a lot of rebellion. It does cause a lot of outrage because teenagers in this day and age, they can always make a plan. Someone did say that teenagers will teenage. So you might just find now that at school, for example, they're able to log into their Instagram and so they're okay with you taking their phone. They're just sort of putting on the show for you because you took their phone. So sometimes that isn't always the option, especially if there's no justification for it or at least an explanation. And that could be as simple as, I am going to take your phone because I am aware that this and this and this is happening. But if you take the phone with no explanation, the child just thinks, oh, okay, I can do what you're doing. I can also meet you halfway.
Yeah.
What is that proving? Who is that helping?
All right. Another one says, Relebogile, that's how we lose our African values. A child is a child. Let us let the West do how they do and stick to our African ways. Guys, no. There are so many things that are African ways that have been the cause of so many problems. Do what you will in your homes, but also be prepared for the consequences. So if you are saying children not having privacy is African ways, let's keep in mind the number of children who have been exposed to things that they should have never been exposed to on the basis of, well, children must and African ways. Afternoon, if teenagers are going to teenage, they are allowed, as long as they remember that the consequences of their actions will also consequence. The law of cause and effect will reach where my teachings have failed, according to experts. As long as we understand each other on that point with my teenager, we are clear. So one thing, Zianda, that I hope you can share with us, because I have and am learning that parenting from a place of consciousness it takes a lot of work. So now you want to teach, you want to discipline, but it also requires for you as the parent to do the work, like being consistent, like also if there are rules in the house that you must also lead by example and. On the basis of this discussion with regards to teenagers and their privacies, what would you share are some handy tips that the parents can take away?
I would definitely say that there are moments that will call for closer monitoring or putting those discussions, the uncomfortable ones, on the table. And I think the biggest thing there is pay attention. Pay attention without response, without reaction. Pay attention to your child. You know what they do, how they do their things. Notice the changes. Notice their mood swings. Notice the secretive behavior or lying about their whereabouts, the small things. Notice how they withdraw from certain people or certain situations or certain things. Notice the drastic changes in their appearance or their interests or their school performance. And sometimes it's in those moments where you realize that there is actually something wrong. Now I need to pay attention. Those are the things you need to pay most attention to, not just respond and react. It doesn't help. At the end of the day, it does not help.
A last message that says, my daughter's now 17. I used to be so strict with her. A few minutes back, she called me saying she misses me because I drive around with her sometimes, and I realized just open talks go a long way. Connection with our kids go a long way, especially fathers. Once they develop that trust, it merely becomes easy. Zianda, thank you so much for your time on today's Parenting and Parents.
Thank you, Relebogile.
It's 2:30, time for your latest Eyewitness News headlines. Good afternoon.
Thanks, Relebogile. Good afternoon. 4 former Transnet executives accused of fraud, corruption and money laundering have been released on 50,000 rand bail each. MK Party members Brian Molefe and Siyabonga Gama, together with former Transnet CFO Anosh Singh and former engineer Thamsanqa Gama, appeared in the Palm Ridge Magistrate Court. The death toll in the floods that hit the Eastern Cape earlier this month has risen to 102. The OR Tambo district remains the hardest hit with 78 fatalities. Among the lives lost are 32 pupils, with a demographic breakdown of 49 men and 53 women. And UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has urged the world to rev up the engine of development at a time when US-led cuts are jeopardizing the fight against poverty and climate change. Dozens of world leaders are gathering in Spain for the June 30th to July 3rd conference to seek fresh impetus for the crisis-hit aid sector. But the United States is snubbing the biggest such talks in a decade, underlying the erosion of international cooperation on combating hunger, disease and climate change. Those are the headlines this EWN, and more at 3 or as it happens.
EWN Traffic.
Well, at this stage in the Edenvale area heading towards Bedford View, slow-moving traffic. R24 westbound between Edenvale Road and the Gillies interchange. Also in Randburg heading towards four-ways, slow-moving traffic. N1 northbound, that's between Bears, Nordier and Malibongwe Drive. We still have slow-moving traffic. That's in the Centurion area, rather in the Midrand area heading towards Sandton. On the N1 southbound between Samrand and New Road. Look out for those faulty traffic lights in Edenvale, Modderfontein Road, and the N3. Traffic lights also still out of order in Alex at Marlborough and Far East Bank. If you come across any other traffic issues, please SMS us on 31702. We are also on X at EWN Traffic.
There's more EWN on air, online, and on the EWN app.
Clement Maniatella.
Weekday mornings,
9 to 12.
9 to 12.
So you are the sacrificial lamb for South Africa. Are you willing to take the bullet to avoid South Africans being compromised?
No, we're not going to lie there like a sacrificial lamb taking a bullet. We're going to
That's
fight
how it
back.
appears. That's how it appears, Helen.
I mean, for example, you look at this national dialogue. Cyril puts a lot of stock in it. We went with it for a little bit.
Why must the ANC take you seriously the next time? Because now it's almost like they know that we can push as hard as we can. These people are never going to leave.
We made threats of withdrawing from the national dialogue, and we did. We absolutely did. And now you can have a completely useless national dialogue, because without us, it'll be a meaningless, hollow gesture.
Clements Maniatella.
9 to 12 on 702.
Beauty lovers, listen up. It's time to treat yourself because Takealot's month-end beauty sale is now on with savings of up to 50% off. That's right, fabulous beauty deals just for you. Revamp your look with their top winter skincare products. Add that perfect mascara to make your eyes pop, or find your signature scent with luxury perfumes. Want that beauty spoil now? Get unlimited same-day delivery with Takealot More. Download the Takealot app and indulge in the month-end beauty sale.
Dear Journal, trying to be an adult at 3,469. Just had a fantastic 2-hour meeting. It was so productive that we accomplished nearly as much as I could have done with one well-written email.
Hating the corporate 9 to 5? Get covered at pineapple.co.za. It's easy and like 19 Rand a day, so it's 100% the insurance for you. Underwritten by Old Mutual Alternative Risk Transfer Insurer Limited, a licensed non-life insurer and authorized FSP. Premiums are risk profile dependent.
To walk the talk is to turn words into meaningful actions. And it's what we at 702 are committed to doing every day. We're also committed to following the rules set out by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission's Code of Conduct. To give you balanced programming, fair comment, and accurate news. But if we stumble along the way and you feel we're not living up to the code, let us know on comment@702.co.za. And if after that you're still not happy, you can direct your complaint in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission, PO Box 412365, Craighall 2024. For more, visit bccsa.co.za.
Nedbank Business Ignite on 702 is looking for a small business owner that talks a big game and delivers even bigger results. So, if you're a small business that consistently dares to innovate, expand and better your bottom line, you could walk away with 200,000 Rand cash and a 200,000 Rand advertising package. So enter on igniteyourbusiness.co.za. Then every day this week from 6 a.m. catch 702 Breakfast with Bongani Bingwa to find out if you're a finalist in Nedbank Business Ignite on 702. T's and C's apply. Nedbank, an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
Coming up
On 702 Drive with John Perlman.
702 Drive is coming up from 3 to 6 p.m. with John Perlman. Happy Monday, John. How are you doing?
Doing well, thanks. Happy Monday to you. How are you?
I am doing well. What's coming up on your show?
Quite a few stories all over the place. In fact, 4 former employees of Transnet, Brian Molefe, Anoj Singh, Siyabonga Gama and Tamsan Kajiani, were in court today. All this around the buying of trains. Now, this happened many, many years ago, as so many of these things did. But we want to go back and just remind ourselves as to what the real issue on the table is. We'll do that after 5 o'clock. A dispute between the military union, South African National Defence Union, and the SANDF soldiers who were in the eastern part of the DRC recently returned are saying they owed a lot of money. SANDF is disputing that. We'll try and look at the merits of the issue after 4 o'clock. Also after 4, an absolutely horrific instance of a 3-year-old girl mauled to death by a pack of dogs. We'll take a closer look at that. Try and get some experts to I don't quite know what to say, but is there any way we can avoid these things? Our reporter Tabiso Gobe is also out there talking to people involved and affected by this appalling tragedy. The Johannesburg Stock Exchange and others have been trying to get people to claim money that is owed to them by financial services companies, and the amount runs into many, many billions. But tracing people and letting people know the money apparently is not always a life-changing amount. It's not as if there's 750,000 Rand owed to you or me.
Yes.
But there are amounts that are not inconsequential in the small number of thousands, but in this day and age. And it's a long-running problem that nobody's actually managed to solve. There's a new effort. We're going to talk about that new effort at 10 minutes to 4.
Like a private investigators type of thing? Because I'm just assuming that maybe upon a person's death, their things were not all in one place. And now to trace people, like how far back did the people go of these billions?
No, but well, that's part of it. But there are people who are alive now who have money owed to them, money that they could claim. It's been good. This has literally been going on for years. It might even be decades.
I will definitely tune in because I want to hear the part of how do you check if you're owed money.
Yeah. Well, we'll find that out and share it with listeners. We've done this before, by the way.
Yeah.
Probably about 2 years ago, I think we had the JSE on. Individual companies have been chasing beneficiaries, and on it goes. But the importance is for the individuals, but also for the economy. If we can get this money circulating, if you get some money and you buy a dress from me because I make them, then it's money in my pocket, and then I can buy an extra bag of chicken for a party I couldn't throw before.
I get you completely.
On it goes.
And I think that's the part that maybe we missed out on. But thank you so much, John Perlman, hosting 702 Drive from 3 to 6 p.m.
702.
The Naked Scientist.
Time for The Naked Scientist with Dr. Chris Smith, as we do on a Monday. Get all of your science-related questions coming in, 011-883-0702, and the WhatsApp line 072-702-1702. Happy Monday, Doctor. How are you?
Monday, I'm very well. How are you?
I am doing very, very well, and I'm quite excited to get into the science-related questions. We always have it's almost become a waiting list. I don't know if you know, Doctor.
I have an inkling.
All right, I'm going to kick off with one of the questions that we didn't really get to touch on. Mongezi from last week was actually asking if there are different seasons in space.
Well, when we say seasons, we're referring, of course, to our planet, the Earth. And that begets the question, well, why do we have seasons in the first place? What are seasons? Why do they occur? The reason the Earth has seasons is because we are not straight up and down on our axis. The planet doesn't go round straight up and down north through south. The planet's actually tilted. It's tilted at 23.5 degrees. So as we go round the sun, for some parts of our orbit, which takes a year to complete one lap of the solar system, one hemisphere is pointing towards the sun, and on the opposite side of its orbit, that hemisphere is pointing away from the sun. And so you can immediately see that the hemisphere which is pointing towards the sun is going to have longer day lengths than the hemisphere which is pointing away. And that means that the hemisphere pointing towards the sun is going to get more light. More light means more energy, and more energy means more heat. So therefore, you have a summer when your hemisphere is pointing towards the sun and you have longer days, more heat input, and the environment warms up. And conversely, when you're on the side of our orbit where our hemisphere is tilted away from the sun, then you have less light, sun lower in the sky, days are less long, less energy, and therefore things cool off. And if you're on the equator, then you get pretty much the same conditions all year round, because although the planet's tipped over a bit, the equator has minimal movement and therefore has minimum differences in terms of the day-night durations. And so things are pretty stable at the equator, although there will be some knock-on effects because of the north and south effect being affected differently, but mostly stability at the equator, less so elsewhere on the planet's surface. So would other planets and possibly their moons have seasons in the same way? Well, some, yes. Some planets are so bizarre, like Venus, for example. Venus isn't tipped over like us, but it's spinning at incredibly slow speeds. A year on Venus is less long than a day. Yes, you did hear that correctly.
What?
Venus takes longer to spin once than it does to go all the way around the sun. So as a result, you end up with blistering heat in some places and less blistering heat, but not much, because Venus is pretty roasting all over. Other places, like Uranus, is tipped on its side. We think possibly it got clobbered early in the history of the solar system by something big which knocked it over. So it's almost like our planet spinning on its side, but it's a gas giant, so you wouldn't want to live there anyway. So we're the only planet with seasons that work our way, but we would certainly see seasonal changes on other places which also are going to see more or less sunshine at certain parts of their orbit or certain parts of their trajectory, and therefore there will be patterns that change. Mars also has winters and summers, although they're less pronounced because it's a very different environment there. So no, we're not the only place with seasons.
Doctor, you pronounced what we refer to as Uranus as Uranus. What is the actual correct pronunciation? Is it Uranus?
Well, actually, I think people who are probably a bit more sensitive tend to say Uranus because it makes them feel a bit less uncomfortable. But Uranus is good for me. And in fact, you know, where I'm sitting, I'm not far from where the guy who actually discovered Uranus, actually was based. William Herschel discovered Uranus, and he did that using a telescope in his own back garden, because that was back in the days when if you were rich and bright and industrious, you could build something that would enable you to see stuff. And he discovered a planet from his own back garden. Pretty amazing.
Wow. Okay, I'm going to start saying Uranus only because I'll say Dr. Chris Smith said it like that, and he knows almost everything. More of the questions coming through. One on the WhatsApp line says, "Hi, Relebogile and Dr. Chris, a body that are transplanted on." Please resend this message because the language is not languaging, and I'm struggling to read. Is it Holla in Ekurhuleni? Please resend so that I can just make sure that I'm saying the question correctly. So let me move on to the next one, which says, does the naked scientist believe that there is a parallel universe? For example, a total opposite of what Lebo is, or a total opposite of the naked scientist?
So what, the clothed scientist? Would I be wearing clothes in a different alternative universe? Possibly. The answer is that we just don't know. We only have one universe to go on, which is our present universe. But as one person said, you've got to be really cautious with physics, because you can theorize and come up with all kinds of ideas and believe anything you want on paper, but proving it is a different matter. So one must keep an open mind, and theoretically, it's not impossible that there are other universes, but actually showing that they exist is more tricky. Why might they exist? Well, it may well be that there are parallel universes, so there are lots of different things, a bit like the entity we live in, that are all separated from one another, and we can't see them, we can't feel them, but they're literally hovering just in front of our face. And there are various reasons why that might be possible. But the best theories we have about this suggest that if such an architecture does exist, then it's possible that gravity and gravitational waves may propagate between them. And in the near future, there's going to be a really exciting space mission operating called LISA, which is a large interfering space telescope. This is a massive construction in space that will resolve gravitational waves very, very sensitively and very, very accurately. And if there are gravitational waves propagating from other universes, this ought to be able to find them, and amongst doing other things, obviously. And so it will be possible to begin to really restrain and constrain some of our understanding of this a bit more. But we just don't know, to be honest. One theory invoked is that, and there's another Uranus type word coming up, some people suggest that our universe, which came from a big bang, that big bang could have been at the arse end of a black hole in someone else's universe. So basically everything goes down a black hole and it emerges from a white hole, which is a big bang in a new universe. It's just another theory, but it's possible. But we, at the moment, have no way to prove whether there is one universe, and that's the one we've got, or one of many.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we continue with Dr. Chris Smith.
702 delivers
on the matters that matter to you.
I am Alula Madlamini, an avid Talk Radio 702 listener. Have been listening since way back when it was medium wave, all the way till now. Talk Radio 702 is, it forms part of the network of what my life is made up of, from God to my family to my joy. 702 is my magazine of life. The depth and width of knowledge, from fun to spiritual knowledge and fulfillment. So I find everything on 702, so much that it is the only radio station that I listen to from Monday to Sunday. I am totally sold out on Talk Radio 702.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts.
so we can deliver more on what matters to you.
702 listens.
Let's walk the talk.
Hi, I'm Lewis Hamilton. Victory demands everything, but the journey is never solo. My team carves the way, data and innovation are my compass. This is how today's champions are made.
Drive your success and trade like a champion. CFI, a global leading broker now in South Africa. Access over 15,000 instruments, advanced trading tools, 24/7 support, and superior trading services. Visit cfi.trade today. CFI Financial is an authorized financial services provider.
CFI, empower yourself.
Hollywood Bets, the home of timeless slots entertainment, brings you a spinning showdown that comes with great rewards. The spin of a lifetime awaits in the all-new Spinner Zonke Cash Blast. Stand a chance to win a share of an explosive 400,000 Rand in cash when you bet 2 Rand or more on selected EGT digital games. Strap in for skyrocketing success. Bet now. T's and C's apply. Hollywood Sportsbook is a licensed betting operator. No persons under the age of 18 years are permitted to gamble. Winners know when to stop. South African Responsible Gambling Foundation toll-free counselling line 0800 006 008 or WhatsApp help to 076 675 0710.
From 24 to 27 July, Decorex Joburg returns to the Sandton Convention Centre, now spanning 5 halls. Explore over 300 brands, shop exclusive show specials, and discover the latest in interiors, kitchens, bathrooms, and luxury finishes. Experience live interactive demos, expert-led talks, and the Handmade Africa Design Market. There's something for every style, space, and home. Book your tickets now at decorex.co.za or at the door.
702.
The Naked Scientist.
10 minutes to 3 o'clock. We continue with the Naked Scientist, Dr. Chris Smith. Your questions on 011 883 702 and the WhatsApp line 072 702 1702. All right, we're going to try the message that I was struggling to decipher earlier again, Doctor. If a donor gives a body organ to a recipient, can their character transfer to the recipient? Example, if the donor was a robber, can the recipient suddenly adopt the characteristics and become a robber? Doctor? Doctor?
Nice try, but it's not going to work that way, unfortunately, because your behavior, your characteristics, your traits are driven by the way your brain is wired up. And at the moment, we don't do brain transplants. If we did do a head transplant and a brain with it, then unfortunately, while you'd be able to probably be alive and conscious, you wouldn't be able to move or anything like that, because all the wires, the nerves, which would enable you to feel things and do things, would all be disconnected. So that would not be a transplant you'd want. When you move a body part from one person into the other, your tissue, which is foreign to your body, and the DNA message in there is foreign to your body, but your donor is chosen to be as a closer match genetically as it can be. But what's coming into the body is just foreign tissue and foreign DNA instructions. They will not affect your behavior beyond the fact that someone may, for instance, if they're given the gift of life by someone very generously making a donation, or a person who's killed and their family generously make a donation, it can be enormously life-changing for the person who gets that organ. Beyond just being alive, it can totally change their perspective, and many people do report feeling very different about having a second chance. So it's not entirely true it won't change your behaviour, but that's more your own self-reflection than something that comes in with a donor of body parts that changes your behaviour. An interesting thing, though, you mentioned being a robber. One person asked me once, and they're quite right actually in what they were suggesting. I don't know what they had planned, but if you had a bone marrow transplant, and we do this quite regularly for people who have bone marrow problems, for instance, they have leukemias, which is a kind of cancer of the bone marrow. One treatment for that is to destroy a person's own bone marrow, and then you give stem cells from another person, and those stem cells give you back a new bone marrow. But the blood group you have and the DNA markers in your blood are going to be the markers of your donor, not you yourself. So if you were to commit a crime and leave a blood sample behind, then the blood would have one DNA fingerprint, but the swab you got taken from your face, for example, your mouth, in order to rule you out of the inquiries, would be a very different DNA profile. So it's possible to escape detection that way, but it seems a pretty extraordinary length to go to in order to not get caught. Better not to do the crime in the first place, I'd say.
All right, thank you so much. Let's go to Eddie in Soweto. Eddie, go ahead.
Hi, Relebogile. Yes, my question is, it's about the nuclear weapons. Why countries are having these nuclear weapons? We are told they are very dangerous, and why can't they get rid of them, and then we live in a peaceful world?
Is this a science-related question, Eddie, or more like ethics?
No, it's a science-related question. What is so devastating about nuclear weapons? Because we always hear that they have got nuclear bombs. If a country like Russia or America was to detonate one, then they will wipe everything on the face of the earth.
So your question is, why can't countries dismantle them?
Yes, why own dangerous nuclear weapons?
So the reason I was asking if your question was political or scientific, because Dr. Chris will tell you that they can. If you can build something, you can figure out a way to undo it. But it's about the fact. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Oh, I get you. I would say also it's political because because weapons. Yes.
Remember, from a political perspective, you will keep nuclear weapons for in case. I mean, I'm gonna still let Dr. Chris though put in his 2 cents. Doctor.
Heidi, you're right that it would be wonderful if we didn't have nuclear weapons, because the problem with nuclear weapons is as soon as one person has them, everyone wants one, and as soon as other people get them, no one will get rid of them, because you don't want to be the person who doesn't have them, because it buys you a seat at a very selective table and people take you seriously. For instance, if we look at what's been happening between Russia and Ukraine, one of the reasons why the rest of the world hasn't just waded in and flattened Russia is because Russia can't be trusted not to use these weapons, and they would probably do enormous damage to Russia, not just politically, but environmentally, as well as whoever they decided to launch these weapons at. But the problem is that they are a dirty weapon, and they will damage the environment, not just where they're unleashed, but also potentially globally. And the fallout, the radiation from them, can spread far and wide, and they can render an area completely unusable for many years to come. Just look at what happened around Chernobyl, the nuclear power station that blew up. I mean, it wasn't a nuclear weapon, but it was a nuclear disaster. And the ground around there is still completely uninhabitable decades later. It would take thousands of years to completely break down that radioactivity. So the threat that they pose is enormous, but the energy they unleash is also huge, which buys you the respect of other people who don't have them, and it buys you the respect of people who do have them. And as a result, although many people would say the world would be much better off if no one had them, no one's going to do that because no one wants to be the one at the party who has come without them.
Yeah. And that's the absolute reality of it all. I'm going to do my best to get through this question quickly. The question says, when you visit a child psychologist or an OT specialist, they always ask if the child was planned. What is the significance of this question in the diagnosis of things like ADHD?
Well, there's a number of reasons why that might be a relevant question. And one of the reasons is if a baby is planned, women who are planning a pregnancy usually take steps to make sure that their nutrition is as good as it can be, their health is as good as it can be. Things that might be deleterious to a pregnancy, like alcohol, are avoided. Other drugs, for example. A baby that is unplanned might not fall into those circumstances. A person might, for instance, be drinking alcohol more heavily. And they may be smoking, not just nicotine-containing products either. They may be taking other drugs or even medicines that might be bad for a developing baby, and then they discover later they're pregnant, and then they may change that behaviour. But some things which put themselves together very early in pregnancy, all the major organ systems, and especially the brain, the pattern for all those organs are laid down very early in development. So if the environment isn't ideal, things can go wrong. And so it is useful to ask if a baby is planned or unplanned, because it can give you insights into the milieu in which that conception occurred, and therefore the biochemical milieu and the stress that mum might have been experiencing at the time when the baby was developing. So it can be informative.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chris Smith. Back together next week.
See you next time.
What does extraordinary mean to you?
Is it being voted South Africa's most trusted enterprise telco 2 years in a row?
Vodacom Business helps more than 133,000 businesses with AI, cloud, enterprise apps, IoT, and security. One seamless ecosystem. Together, let's build the extraordinary that sustains today and protects tomorrow. Start your journey at vodacombusiness.co.za. Further together, Vodacom Business.
We plan for vacations, retirement, and even tonight's dinner. But do we plan for our health? It's how we protect our family's future. So who are you staying healthy for? And how can you protect their future? Choose Dis-Chem Life, the life cover that helps you live a healthier, more rewarding life with health checks and extra rewards. Visit dischemlife.co.za now. Dis-Chem Life. Choose a better partner for life. Dis-Chem Life is an authorized FSP 50594, underwritten by Guardrisk Life, a licensed life insurer, FSP 76. T's and C's apply.
Quiet, please.
The Wimbledon experience in Mzansi is back at Amex Tennis Town Monte Casino between 11 and 13 July 2025. Enjoy VIP hospitality, the ultimate big screen experience, and more than just strawberries and cream. Buy your tickets now using your Amex card on Howler and get 50% off on limited tickets. Amex Tennis Town, the Championships Wimbledon experience with the Mzansi advantage. Tennis is better with Amex.
As the official retail partner of the Springboks, Pick n Pay is proud to back the Boks and give you the chance to be the ultimate smart supporter with Pick n Pay ASAP. Money or the Boks on 702. WhatsApp your name, ID number and the word ASAP to 072 702 1702. You could face the ultimate choice, a mystery Springbok supporter prize or Pick n Pay ASAP vouchers worth up to 2,000 Rand. It's time to show your Boks spirit. Money or the Boks with Pick n Pay ASAP. Friday on 702 Drive with John Perlman. T's and C's on primemediaplus.com.
Thank you so much for joining us. Back tomorrow. It's 3 o'clock.
This is EWN.
Ex-Transnet bosses out on 50,000 Rand bail each, and Eastern Cape death toll rises to 102. Good afternoon, I'm Zingisa Chirwa. 4 former Transnet executives accused of fraud, corruption and money laundering have each been released on 50,000 Rand bail. MK Party members of Parliament Brian Molefe and Siyabonga Gama, together with former Transnet CFO Anosh Singh and former engineer Thamsanqa Gama, appeared in the Palm Ridge Magistrate